Hello everyone, this is Poke Viking with a W, reaching out to you, talking about everything Pokemon. So today I would like to discuss a little topic of comparisons between the US and EU pricings of, I think, the most sought of sealed products per set, as they were from Sword and Shield onto the current sets that are also being like pre-sold with Chaos Rising. So I wanted to go through this sheet a little bit and talk about what do you see on both markets, how they evolve, how are they in front of each other or even catching up, and how you can perceive it from a European's perspective. So let's dive into this. I don't want to make this a very long video, but there were some key things that I found out when I was looking at these price charts and everything. I was looking for the US market. I was looking at TCG Player current listings or current sold listings, and for the EU pricing, I was looking at card market, mint conditions, no tears, and whatnot. So, looking at the US value of each sealed product, whether it's a booster box or an elite trainer box in terms of the specialty sets, as you can see, the current cost is, since we have a different calculating system or tax system, the US always calculates the tax after the product has been sold. So this is the cost per box before taxes and shipping. The other column is the price converted onto the euro with the current exchange rate and still without like the tax involved. As far as I researched, re- the tax rates between is somewhere between 5 and 10% in the U.S., depending on the state where you live in. So I didn't account for that because that would skew the entire calculations, I guess, or at least it would be a little bit different. So if you want, we can think this through and figure out probably a value like plus 10% in terms of the euro converted value. But we will talk about it in detail. And on the card market, since European states have this regulation tax-wise, we already include our tax into the price. So it's already like tax included price. There's a little bit of a difference, a little bit of variance. So for us Europeans and probably in for some of the US audience and someone will be watching this video, it might be a little bit interesting what the outcomes are from this small endeavor. Now, mind you, looking at the prices in these two columns, if I look onto the Sword and Shield base set, the price is around 580 euros before tax and before shipping. And the value of the European sealed boxes is 645, including tax minus shipping. So there's a little bit of shipping involved. So the overall prices, if you look at it from this standpoint, is are somewhat similar, at least for Sword and Shield. Now, for Rebel Clash, we are way ahead of the curve, even if you add everything into the US pricing. So if you're an investor and if you're still looking for like sealed boxes, and I don't know, probably if you like pay customs and duties, this wouldn't be a reasonable buy either way. So when looking at these prices, please consider that if you are resident in the EU, this is not like a final price. This is also like, if we disregard the taxing and shipment, it's also like duties and tariffs and whatnot not included in this. So figuring out the most recent price would be best to look at the card market, and it's more reasonable to buy even with this higher amount, or maybe it kind of differs. So you can do the calculations on your own. I haven't included it just because I wanted to show you the price differences and how far are we as the European investors, or if we are ahead or behind the US, if there are any opportunities for you to buy or sell on the internet. So Rebel Clash is way ahead of the curve when you look at the pricings. Darkness Ablaze is somewhat similar in terms of the pricings if you include everything. Champion's Path, same thing. Vivid Voltage, likewise. There will be other differences moving down the list. So Shining Fates is probably still a good buying opportunity. If you think about the current prices on the market for various um, Elite Trainer boxes, since Shining Fates has only is a special expansion, a specialty set, then it means that we only have like ETBs here. If you are a person that started investing in the COVID era, this hasn't moved much for you. So it's already been like 6 years or something since this is out of print. But Shining Fates has a history of bringing people into the hobby, similarly to how other sets like 151 have done so in the recent years. So it might be a good investment opportunity for European investors since there are also other sets that in the current era are way above this benchmark. So if you are dollar cost averaging, this might be something of interest to you probably. Battle styles, we are somewhat ahead of the curve, but battle styles is moving way slow. So this is one of those slow movers. Chilling Rain is somewhat similar in terms of the pricings. Evolving Sky is also similar. Celebrations, I think these started moving recently due to the announcement of the Pokemon Day coming in and 30th celebration. So price-wise, very similar. Fusion Strike, likewise. Brilliant Stars, can consider them fairly similar as well. Astral Radiance, also fairly similar. Pokemon Go, so similarly to the Shining Fates, this also has a lower price mark or price tag. And even if it's not moving right now, probably something to consider. I know it's not a strong set to buy, but if you're an investor, if you're holding long term, this might probably make sense to you. Lost Origin, very similar. Silver Tempest, very similar. Crowns in it, likewise. Now, moving into the more modern-ish sets, here we might find slight differences. So, if I recall correctly, some of these sets until like Paradox Rift might go out of print at some point. Maybe even Paldean Fates. I'm not sure entirely right now. What is happening here is that we will, as European investors, tend to fall behind in terms of the pricing. So the liquidity in US and the velocity is stronger in the US right now, at least. If you look at the numbers, Scarlet and Violet behind a little bit. Paldea Evolved starts to fall behind even more. Obsidian Flames is behind. Also, Scarlet and Violet 151 is behind. So you might see a trend evolving here. Like previously, I said that there might be instances where it might be good to buy from the US, and probably this part might make sense for some US investors to buy stuff from the EU, so the other way around. So it's interesting to see like this development that EU doesn't have the buying power. Maybe it's not that popular, or it's just that the cash flow is not that strong as in the US. So 151 also falling behind. Paradox Rift a little bit behind, but not much. Paldean Fates behind by quite a lot. Temporal Forces also similarly behind. Twilight Masquerade also a little bit behind. Shrouded Fable. This one is interesting. I know it's a very weak set, but if we are talking about MSRP, look at the price difference and the buying opportunity here. If you are like dollar cost averaging and buying per capita, you can buy a lot of boxes for Shrouded Fable. I'm not shilling for this. I don't own any Shrouded Fable. I wouldn't buy it even at this price. I'd consider my strategy a little bit different in terms of the liquidity aspect and how quickly a set should rise. But If you have a tighter budget, I think with modern sets as they go, this might be a good buying opportunity for people with smaller budgets. So I'm an advocate for this a little bit in this case. If you look at it, maybe even the U.S. If the U.S. people, residents, people that are watching, are looking for a buying opportunity, well, here's one if I've ever seen one. Stellar Crown falling a little bit further behind as well. Surging Sparks. This has a little bit of a different story. From what I've been seeing on the internet, like Surging Sparks has a history that it's not being currently sold, or at least maybe it was reprinted by quite a lot in the US, and the price is very stagnant, even though buying power is there. But for the Europeans, in this one particular case, we are ahead, which begs the question that this set may be more popular in Europe, and therefore there's a lot less of it, not that many reprints. So if your cost basis was at MSRP at the beginning of the set at the release, then you might consider like taking profits at some point with this set, or wait a little bit because it will still rise since it's rising quicker than in the US. Prismatic evolutions, somewhat similar story, except that in our case, at least, this is a mint version, so the pricing is mint in this case. But in the US, if I don't know if the CG player shows the condition, like if it's I know it shows the condition like mint or near mint, but I don't know if the listings, similar to in card market, tell the story of how damaged the box is. So probably this number might be a little bit higher, I would assume, at least from what I've seen currently. But the current listing is at this current price. So let's consider this one somewhat of a Higgs boson, if you will, and this price might be very similar to the European market. Journey Together, different story. Again, Journey Together not moving, not popular in the Europe. I know it's not popular overall, but still the US market is stronger in this case. Destined Rivals. Now, as far as popularity and buying power goes over sets, the US is very strong in this case. However, in Europe, for whatever reason, this set is not moving as much. So I think this is the conservative aspect of Europeans buying any kind of set, and might be a good like comparison that if we were to expect a price or a ceiling of a price, at least in the short term, then this might be a good buying opportunity, even though at this current price. But thinking about like a 150 euros profit, if we are not considering the tax inclusion, let's round it out to 500 and between 350. Well, there's some value to be told here, I guess. Black Bolt and White Flare. Now, these are fairly similar between the markets. And Mega Evolution, like the current modern sets, they are exactly the same, which is kind of funny. Phantasmal Flames, also similar story. Ascended Heroes, very similar story. And Perfect Order, also similar. And Chaos Rising, also fairly similar. So the conclusion of this is that if we go to the very top, the older sets, I would feel like they are very close to each other. So the more time went by, the closer the US and EU markets actually are, at least maybe in some exceptions like Shining Fates and Pokemon Go. When it comes to the modern sets, the market tends to go way quicker for the US, at least the recent 3-year range, at least it seems like. So the more attention is currently focused on the Scarlet and Violet booster boxes, and I think for a fairly good reason, since they have a much bigger variety of quality cards to like the cards that you're chasing, and even the current, I don't know how you call this, like hypermodern cards, hypermodern sets, since they are fairly similar in terms of pricing, you can see that if you were to go by this trend, what we can expect is that the playing field for Scarlet and Violet might probably also level up in in terms of like the 3-year horizon, next 3 years. It will still increase, but Europe might catch up as it caught up with Sword and Shield products. And what then we can expect is when this playfield levels out, or even like US goes ahead, we might expect that with the next generation of Pokemon, Mega Evolutions will rise even quicker to higher value. So this begs the question of how investable are Scarlet and Violet and Mega Evolution sets right now if we look on it from this current perspective, like the leveling play field. And even if you are an investor, it gives you also an idea of how quickly have the sets risen to their current prices. So expecting rises also from the current sets. Maybe it's not a good comparison because current sets are in like a bull market cycle, and these tend to rise much more quicker. So we'll see what happens in the next 3 years, but something just to think about that I wanted to add. And yeah, I think I'm going to leave it at that. So if you like this type of content, I am happy to bring you more info on my thought process of what I'm looking at and the comparisons and where we might find various opportunities. So if this gave you some kind of info, valuable info, please leave a like and subscribe. Thank you for joining. This was Pokey Viking with a W, and I'll see you next time.